So we saw, we want to introduce who's around you there, and we had a very nice lecture on percutaneous fixation and MIS, and now you want to put into reality what they just showed.
Yeah, so I guess my job is to bring it all together. So, in honor of my training with you, we're going to do a little bit of both. So the way we set up this cadaver is on the left side, percutaneous transfascial. On the right side, it's open. So we can show you things maximally this way. It'll be easy to see and understand. Obviously, everyone's put in pedicle screws before, so we're not here to show you how to put in pedicle screws, but we will show you some of the advantages of a set like this. So this is a peel pack set. Everything comes together, all you need, disposable instruments, and then sterilely packed implants. And so at first pass, it's deceptively simple, and it is, but it has a lot of power and abilities built into it. So we're going to assume, for the sake of this discussion, that we're dealing with an L1 unstable fracture, and the decision is to go 2 levels above and 2 levels below. We will show you bone cement augmentation, since we talked about it earlier, and whether you choose to do that or not is totally up to you. You can do it with this set if you want. And then we'll also show you how to use this system using the iPad and AR to correct a deformity if you chose to do it, taking advantage of what the system has to offer. So, one point to bring up is I was trained at a time where USS was the gold standard. So we had a monoaxial screw, side loading, and we placed all our screws, and you were taught how to bend a rod to match your construct, and the assumption was that if you could eyeball it and see it well and bend a rod really well, you'd be great because you had persuaders and distractors that would allow you to bring the rod to the spine and vice versa. But the reality is that also has some problems in the long term, and so we'll talk about that not just in the lab today, but also during the lunch lecture. So let's get started. So the setup that you have here, we have 2 screws above, so T11, T12, and then we've skipped L1, and then we have screws already in L3. For the purpose of the demonstration, we'll place screws at L2. I'm also going to assume that in treating this patient's fracture, we want the ability to reduce this fracture and correct a deformity. So this system has a unique feature of being a polyaxial system, but you can, on the fly, switch this screw to a monoaxial screw by adding a little pin. And so that can be done on the back table by your tech or your rep. And so once that's done, it converts to a monoaxial screw. So this screw is now monoaxial, and we're going to use this particular screw for the purposes of demonstration. So again, we're going to put screws in at L2. So standard technique, nothing too exciting. I already put a hole in here before the pedicle probe. So screw is placed, you get a fluoro shot. Okay, so we can see our screws placed. We placed percutaneously the wires ahead of time. So again, we're going to do a transfascial perc screw here. All right, so again, just same system, just the ability to do both. I get next screw right there. Okay, so we're pretty well seated. Okay. So these 2 screws are monoaxial, the rest are polyaxial for the purposes of discussion. And so this is where the magic really is. So this is a QR code, and what we're going to do now is, if we were doing an open case, if Jens and I were doing this when I was in training, we'd eyeball this, we might take a rod template, bend our rod to match it, but we're going to do something a little bit different today. So these are QR codes we're attaching to the system. And then we're going to use an iPad. So you should be able to see it on the screen here in a moment. Okay. So we're using augmented reality, right? You can see through the iPad what we normally see through our eyes. And I'm using this particular generation 2. Head positions on the patient's left here to me. And then we're going to use marker detection to confirm this. And so now we're going to set the center of our field. Wow. And so now I'm taking advantage of LiDAR, which is what the iPad has built in. And once we've scanned the field, the iPad is now
Well
going
done.
to detect all the screws.
Well done, Ali.
All those years of training. So once it picks these things up here,
That's cool.
so it's just mapping out the screws, and you'll see them all kind of come into alignment here. And some won't, but we'll correct that. So obviously these screws look a little odd, so we're going to spin them to match their true trajectory. Okay, so now we can see our screws right through the patient, augmented reality. We can look at it this way, look at it from the top, make sure things are okay. So we're just going to confirm that things are where we thought they were going to be, right? Patient's head's on the left, our screws in proper orientation, and then here's where the advantage of software is. So if you look on the screen, you can actually see where each screw is placed. You see the distance between each screw. And then you can do some pretty interesting things. So if you want to look at a bent rod, right, there's no bent rod that's ready to go that would fit the particular contour that we have. If we go to a straight rod, you'll see that a 160 millimeter rod would get us to where you want to be, irrespective of whether I'm trying to do a correction or not. But if I want to do some things with that rod, let's say I choose a 160 rod, now you can actually see the offset of those screws relative to what a straight rod is. So see, for example, the T12 screw, right, needs to be corrected by 3 millimeters. Similarly, the L2 screw would need to be corrected by 3 millimeters to get you to that ideal straight rod. Then you can also grab a rod, and you can move the positioning, right, to see if you were to adjust the rod in some fashion, would you be able to get correction or not? So for our purposes, we're going to do a custom rod. And so the iPad is now going to tell me exactly what I need to do to bend this rod to fit this construct. So this becomes really important in patients who have osteoporosis. And so we're going to assume for a second that this guy or this patient is an osteoporotic patient. We don't want to put a lot of tension on the rod as we reduce it to the screws. And similarly, you don't want to have pull out from the screws if we're trying to fix a deformity. So on the iPad right now, you'll see that, coronally, that's the way the rod should look. That's going to be the sagittal bend. It tells me the rod needs to be 156 millimeters in length. So the iPad is a true template. So what we're going to do on the back table here is we have a rod. So you can see it here. I'll just show it to you, right? We've actually cut this rod ahead of time to match the length that we needed. And so I'm going to bring this iPad over here so I can bend it to it so you can see it as well.
You can adjust the camera.
Can you adjust the camera? Okay. So we have a rod holder.
Are you going to bend that rod manually?
I'm going to bend that rod manually, just the way you taught me. Okay. Right, so here's our rod. We want to bend it to match. So just for the sake of making it easy on myself, right? Kind of mark off where the screws are essentially on the rod. And then I'm just going to do some bending. We have to get pretty close to where we need to be. Right, so we're pretty close. And so I should be able to drop this thing in perfectly, essentially, without having to manipulate anything, without having the spine be under any undue tension. So the nice thing now is that this is a very lightweight system, and we'll talk about in the next lecture the importance of having a screw head be truly orthogonal to a rod. So, in the beginning, we would force and pull the spine and rods to meet our constructs, and in the process of doing that, it actually stores energy in the system, which eventually will unspool, if you will, and cause other problems down the road. So, that was set screw.
Cement first?
Okay, yeah. So we talked about cementing, so we'll do that now because once I cement, I can't put a rod in. So as in the previous lectures, we talked about bone cement. So in this system, if you want to add bone cement, it's easy to do. So on the back table, it's already been mixed. And let me show you here. I'll take these off in the meantime. So this tube has been filled with bone cement. You can thread it directly into the system and you just let it find its center. Okay. And you can let this thicken up if you want to make it a little more viscous. Yeah, I'll just do one side. Okay, got the plungers there. And then under fluoro, right, if you take a live shot there, you actually see, right, bone cement. And so I'll just fire all these in really quickly. And then a patient who is really osteoporotic or patients who have multiple myeloma and don't have much cancellous bone, this can be very useful. Okay, so let's say we're satisfied with our bone cement. We're just going to unscrew these things. I think we'll just, there you go. Okay. So to place the rod, right, we've already bent this rod to meet the contour of the spine the way it is, or the way that we wanted to correct it. Now, on this T-handle, right, standard T-handle, this little piece is basically a torque limiter to 2 Newton meters. And so we're going to use that initially just to hold our rod. So I can get rid of the rod holder, if you will. So set screw. Again, I'm going to let the system find its center. So I'm not going to bring artificially force the head of the screw to do something it doesn't want to do. So now that that's fixed, I can take this out, and then I can do the rest. And if you're using this for deformity, you can do the same thing. You can walk the rod down. You can do individual manipulations if you like. So I'm not controlling the towers at all, and you'll see why in a second. So I talked about the importance of having the head of the screw be truly orthogonal with the rod. That minimizes the force and tension in the system. So you'll see that things are moving to find that natural center. That has to do with the system being particularly lightweight. So then once you're satisfied, then we have an anti-torque handle, as you would on most systems. You're just going to break these off. Okay, good, next, Ray. So now we'll do the other side, right? So this is our percutaneous side. So we're going to do the same thing. And you can scan both sides simultaneously if you want. You can do up to 30 screws simultaneously with this particular system. All right, so again, we'll do the same thing. So patient's head's on the left. We're using generation 2 of the system. We're using markers. And so we confirm it. We're going to set the center of our field. And then using the iPad, and then it'll pick up the markers, and that's going a little slowly just to have it capture everything. Okay, so everything's in the proper orientation, right? I can take a look. I can verify for myself. Things look good. We accept it, confirm. So again, I can see what the rod looks like, what the contour is that we need to achieve it. And so we're going to use a custom rod. That's what our rod's going to look like. In the sagittal view, coronal view. Copy the rod, and sure enough, coronal is pretty straight. That's our sagittal correction. So this is the appropriate length. Oh, that'll work.
To be mocked.
Okay. So, okay. So I'm going to measure out the rod here. So it needs to be 149 millimeters in length. So there's 150 approximately. Our particular cutter cuts at 3 centimeters for an offset. So we'll cut this rod here. Do you have a rod holder by chance, just to catch the tip? Let me grab the other side for me. Let me grab the other side right there. Okay. All right. We'll give you that. And then we'll just mark this up again. Go a little less, pretty good. Okay, so we're pretty close. All right, so then I'll let you do the honors. You can go ahead and get that through, just as you would any other MIS set.
And this is Dr. Colin Gold. He's one of our fellows. He's a graduate of the University of Iowa. So, Ali, a great tradition with Dr. Matt Howard being the chair there, the ex-UW graduate. And it's great to have Dr. Gold with us.
Yeah. So we put a little too much. We snap this one. You have the other rod holder? Try to feed this through. Kind of force it through. Okay. Okay, an X-ray right there? Okay, so we're there. All right, so I'll just hold this here for you. And let's get the set screws. So go ahead and put the bottom one first. And then I'll have you use this torque limiter. There you go. So what we'll do, just to make it easy, just go ahead and tighten this one down until it breaks off. Okay. And then I can disengage this X-ray. Okay, so go ahead and put your other screws in. Just finger tighten them. And you'll notice that the towers are going to keep moving to find the true orthogonal relative to the rod. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take, once you walk those things down, so what you do now is let the rod, or I should say let the tower find its center before you grab hold and take control of it. So yeah, let it go where it wants to go, and now go ahead and break it off. Spin this all the way down. So it'll push the pin out, and it'll disengage the tower from the rod, or from the screw. Okay?
All right.
And then go ahead and do the next one. So let it find its natural center again. Yep.
Colin, be honest. Is that more fun than working with me?
Is it what?
Is it more fun than working with me?
No comment.
Poor Colin had to endure a whole day with me yesterday.
No POS impactor.
You remember that? Yeah.
I remember it well.
We have a long-standing and ongoing tradition of terms of affection for various instruments.
Okay, and go ahead and disengage it. Should be good to go. Here it is. Yep, it's done. Okay, X-ray. All right, so there's our rods. Maybe get a little better view.
Nice.
Let me get an AP shot.
Ali, whilst you're doing this, and this can go for our two UCSF lecturers also, Dr. El Nagaf and Dr. Gandelbein. So when I look at percutaneous screws, they frequently look too small and too short to me. Is that just artifact? Is that something critically wrong? Or why is that? Is that just my critical over-interpretation?
No, I mean, I think you can put rods in, I mean, the screws in as long as you want. I tend to place longer screws in general if I can. So, I think it's personal preference. Some people like to put in short screws when doing per cases. For me, if I'm doing fixation, I guess I'm not as worried. But in poor quality bone, some of them I'm going to cement, then, the fenestration of this particular screw and the cannulation, I don't want the screw to be too deep because I want to fill the entire vertebral body. So I think it depends on the manufacturer too, but all in all, I favor longer screws, more purchase.
Yeah. And does this system come with different rods like 5560, or these look very thin, these rods?
So these are 5.5 rods. So I'll show you in the subsequent talk. When dealing with deformities, then we'll start using multiple rods and connectors.
Yeah, that's one of the other shortcomings of the percutaneous systems. Multi-rod constructs are not very user-friendly. They're become kind of onerous. And even Michael Wong, who I admire greatly, seems to struggle with getting multi-rod constructs that mechanically make sense together.
Right. So for a lot of the cases that I do with this particular system, they're done open. Then I have the ability to add a second rod and a connector as such.
All right. Any questions, comments? Ashraf has a big smile on his face.
Oh, no, I mean, it was. It just seems like it seems like a pretty slick system. Yeah, no, I was just really more smiling because it's new technology and really encouraged us to see as to what direction it's going to go in. But this is, it's pretty promising. So.
All right. So I was fascinated. I love that iPad concept there, and visualizing with non-ionizing Cupertino software what's going on in this patient's spine. And I'm sure that these plastic tubes can be made of cornstarch in the future, so we don't have more plastic burden in our oceans. But that's okay. That's a different point.
So we'll actually talk about that in the talk about the environmental impact of this versus a traditional screw set.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. This is very elegant. I've never seen this before, so I think there's some really genius ideas in there that are coming to fruition. I like that recognition of the implants. So we're looking forward to your lecture. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I invite our audience now to get lunch and then head into the conference room up front where we'll have our first ever surgeon's theater demonstration with Dr. Mesiwala. He's going to give a more in-depth technical discussion about this.